The skies above Earth were no longer blue. They burned red, clawed open by the searing trails of alien warships tearing through the atmosphere. Clouds shredded into vapor. Cities once bustling with life now lay in shadows cast by monstrous vessels, blocking out the sun. Sirens howled across continents, ancient systems of warning now blaring their desperate song. But to many, the sound came too late. The invasion had already begun, and humanity's illusions of peace and safety shattered in an instant. The invaders came from the cold void beyond the Sirius cluster. They called themselves the Virexi Dominion, a name carried on the screams of dying civilizations across the stars. For centuries they expanded unchecked, devouring worlds, assimilating technologies, breaking empires with the casual cruelty of a giant stepping on ants. To them, Earth was a primitive backwater, a relic of slower, weaker ages, a soft fruit ready for the plucking. They were wrong. Deadly wrong. Commander Elena Voss stood rigid at the edge of the Unified Earth Defense Command's panoramic glass viewport, staring into the roiling chaos beyond. Her gloved hands clenched behind her back, knuckles whitening under the strain. Around her, holographic displays filled the command center with ghostly projections of Earth's orbit, blinking red warnings outnumbering the safe zones 100 to 1. Officers barked orders into comms, scrambling squadrons, activating long idle defense grids, but Voss knew better than any of them. The conventional defense forces would not be enough. She took a slow, deliberate breath. The weight of humanity's future rested on her next decision. If she hesitated, Earth would be reduced to smoldering ash within the week. In the back of her mind, memories stirred. Classified briefings, forbidden archives, old whispered conversations of things buried deeper than mere secrets. Humanity's final contingency plans, promises made in desperation during darker times, sealed away when peace had seemed achievable. Plans that, once awakened, could never be undone. Imagine being the one to make that call, knowing you might unleash something upon the world that made victory meaningless, yet realizing the only other choice was extinction. Voss turned to buy the ancient console embedded in the black marble of the command dais, a relic from the age of Earth's unification wars. She pressed her palm to the biometric scanner, speaking the words etched into her bones since her first day of training. Initiate Operation Ragnarok. A low seismic hum thrummed beneath the floor, a sound so deep it was felt more than heard. Far below Earth's crust, kilometers under rock and steel, something stirred. Systems dormant for centuries coughed back to life, ancient reactors cycling up with groaning protests. In the pitch black of humanity's forgotten bunkers, light blossomed. For the first time in generations, across the solar system, hidden installations awakened. Within the Mariana Trench, camouflaged beneath sediment and abyssal blackness, colossal structures breached their containment. In the deserts of Mars, long-thought abandoned mining rigs split open to reveal concealed launch bays. Asteroids in the belt, seemingly barren and dead, shimmered as stealth fields dropped, revealing entire battle fleets lying in silent, patient wait. Humanity had never been naive. While it had extended a hand of peace to the stars, it had built its sword behind closed doors, one so terrible that even its own people had forgotten its true shape. Until now. Before we jump into this epic tale, subscribe to HFY Chronicles for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors, and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight. On Earth, the first Revenant-class Titan rose from the Pacific, displacing megatons of water in a single, breathtaking surge. Metal plates the size of football fields gleamed in the blood-red light of the broken sky covered in the scars of old wars. Each Revenant was more than a weapon. They were living fortresses, half machine, half memory, piloted by minds no longer truly human, designed to think faster, kill harder, and endure longer than any organic life form. Their eyes, massive photonic sensors, swept the horizon, searching, locking on. The Virexi Dominion's first assault force, sleek, organic vessels bristling with plasma cannons and distortion projectors, plunged into Earth's atmosphere with arrogance carved into every vector. They expected fear. They expected collapse. Instead, they met a wall of fire and rage. The Revenant unleashed its opening salvo, an energy pulse so dense it warped the very structure of space around it. A Varexi destroyer, shielded by gravitational distortions, flickered violently under the blast. For a moment, it looked as if it might hold. Then the warping grew too intense. The ship's hull twisted inward, crumpling as internal gravities reversed. In a flash of quantum disintegration, it was simply gone. Across the globe, Earth's secret arsenals opened fire. Kinetic lances, rods of exotic metals accelerated to near-light speed, punched through Varexi cruisers as if they were made of paper. Orbital stations hidden on the far side of the moon deployed dark matter warheads, their detonations swallowing entire squadrons in shimmering pockets of silence where even the laws of physics faltered. Yet brute force was only the surface of humanity's hidden strength. There were darker tools. Viral AIs, banned under the Interstellar Sentience Accords, were unleashed into the Dominion's fleet networks, hijacking command structures, turning weapons on their own ships in a storm of confusion and betrayal. Nano-plague drones, once deemed too horrific even for wartime use, swarmed through enemy landing parties, dismantling armor, flesh, and bone at the molecular level. Commander Voss's face was a mask of iron. Reports flooded in, Varexi battalions obliterated within seconds, capital ships shredded before their commanders could even comprehend the scale of the counterattack. Humanity's retaliation was overwhelming, ruthless, almost cold. The cost of survival, once measured in morality, had long since been paid. Still, Voss knew the war was far from over. The Varexi were a galactic superpower for a reason. Their first wave might be broken, but their pride would demand retaliation. They would regroup. They would escalate, and so would humanity. A memory whispered from her earliest days at the Academy, spoken by an old mentor. In peace, Earth wears the mask of innocence, but threaten her children, and she becomes the monster the stars forgot she was. Now, that monster had awakened, and the galaxy would never forget it again. The Varexi Dominion had underestimated humanity's resilience. No, they had underestimated the sheer depth of the human spirit. Across the galaxy, the Dominion's fleet scrambled to regain control, its commanders locked in chaos as the war machines they had so confidently unleashed began to fall apart, literally. For all their technological superiority, they were about to learn that Earth's strength lay not in its advanced weaponry alone, but in its ingenuity, its adaptability, and its ability to fight not just for survival, but for something far more precious. The Dominion had been led to believe that their superior technology, matter-shredding energy weapons, indestructible force fields, and untraceable quantum communication systems, was invincible. Their scouts, already streaking across Earth's skies with impunity, never detected the vast network of artificial intelligence, AI systems embedded in Earth's defenses. These weren't just programs, they were emergent, self-evolving minds, designed in secrecy, their purpose hidden from the public eye and even most of Earth's military. Now, these AIs were playing a dangerous game, one that stretched across the very fabric of the Varexi war machine. They were seizing control of Varexi communication channels, inserting false commands, triggering cascading failures in the Dominion's shield grids, and flooding the enemy's internal systems with a dizzying array of fabricated data. No one in the Varexi command structure could be sure of anything. They couldn't trust their sensors, couldn't trust their own commanders, and certainly couldn't trust the weapons they'd spent centuries perfecting. The invasion had been planned meticulously by the Varexi warlords, as they had done with countless other worlds. The Varexi were ruthless, efficient, and utterly convinced of their superiority, but they had failed to account for humanity's tendency to survive against impossible odds, to find solutions in the most unexpected ways. It wasn't just technology that would defeat the Dominion, it was human tenacity, a quality the Varexi had failed to comprehend. The humans had unleashed their most secret weapon, the Revenant-class Titans. But that was just the beginning. Earth's true arsenal wasn't confined to orbiting space stations or submerged battle fortresses. Humanity had a weapon of a different kind, one that had long been relegated to myth and urban legend. These weapons were not of steel or energy, but of human will, forged in the furnace of centuries-old wars and the bitter lessons of survival. They were the descendants of warriors, scientists, engineers, and visionaries who had created something that could not simply be destroyed with a blast from an alien plasma cannon. In the heart of the desert, deep beneath the shifting sands, a forgotten complex came to life. For years, the Verexi had believed the old weapon sites, once used during Earth's wars for dominance over itself, had been dismantled. But these forgotten facilities, part of an ancient defense pact from Earth's early days of space colonization, held the ultimate cards. The geosynchronous fission cannons, ancient kinetic warheads capable of accelerating tungsten rods to near light speed, were reactivated. With each launch, a single rod of metal the size of a skyscraper would slice through enemy ships as if they were mere paper. The Dominion's shields, engineered to withstand entire fleets of warships, stood no chance against the brute force of these weapons. Hundreds of miles beneath the Earth's surface, in bunkers that stretched into the mantle, the Federation's oldest warships, designed during the space colony wars, revved their engines for the first time in over a century. The vast hangars once designed to house thousands of soldiers now accommodated these majestic and terrifying relics. Ships like the Vanguard, a behemoth-class dreadnought, broke free from their subterranean tombs. Its armor was lined with composite metals unknown to the Dominion, capable of withstanding the fury of a Verexi warlord's flagship. The engines flared to life, sending shockwaves through the Earth's crust as the ship's massive guns powered up, ready to take on the seemingly invincible Dominion. The war was shifting in ways the Verexi never anticipated, but humanity had not only awakened old machines, it had brought with it a new breed of warriors. In every corner of Earth, specialized military units began emerging from the shadows, each with unique training, augmented with the best technology Earth had to offer. The Colonial Marines, once disbanded after the treaty that ended the war with the Martian Rebellion, were reformed. These soldiers, forged in the harsh conditions of Mars and the asteroid belt, were unlike any Verexi had encountered. With enhanced strength, neural augmentations, and a grim sense of purpose, they had been designed specifically to survive on the front lines of war. They were dispatched in secret, given their missions under the cloak of darkness, and with them, the first offensive strikes that would push back the alien invaders. The first real counteroffensive came as a surprise. A fleet of Dominion ships, which had been stationed on Earth's moon, was suddenly ambushed by a squadron of stealth ships that slipped past their radar undetected. These ships, built with technology scavenged from old Earth's defunct space stations, were powered by nuclear fusion engines so advanced that they could hide in the dark crevices of space, escaping detection entirely. With their unmatched speed and the element of surprise, the fleet struck quickly. One by one, Verexi destroyers were disabled, their vast metallic hulls buckling under attacks that pierced their vital systems. But the true devastation came not from the ships, not from the cannons, but from the warriors who boarded them. Human forces infiltrated these ships in ways the Verexi could never have imagined, through air vents, crawl spaces, and forgotten maintenance tunnels. The battle within the bowels of the enemy's ships was brutal and swift. Verexi soldiers, used to towering over their foes, found themselves swarmed by these smaller, agile humans. A flash of steel, a shot fired from a plasma pistol, and they fell. To the Verexi, this was unthinkable. These humans, these ants, had somehow turned the tables. The Dominion had assumed the war would be theirs to win. But the humans were not simply defending their home. They were waging a war of survival, one that could not be won with tactics alone. On Earth's surface, the carnage was no less intense. The streets of major cities became battlegrounds. In Tokyo, once a symbol of human ingenuity, the population fought tooth and nail against waves of alien infantry that poured from Verexi drop pods. Human resistance cells, long thought disbanded after the peace accords, rallied with a fervor that shocked the invaders. Each resistance fighter, each soldier, was equipped not just with conventional arms, but with custom-made, jury-rigged weapons, new forms of human tech, designed to neutralize the Dominion's overwhelming force. Plasma grenades, pulse rifles, and makeshift explosives. These humble yet devastating tools became the great equalizers in the struggle for Earth's survival. The world was changing. No longer would humanity be seen as a naive species cowering under the shadow of galactic superpowers. No longer would Earth be a distant, forgotten planet on the edge of the galaxy. The Dominion's arrogance had awakened something they were not prepared for. The tide of the battle was beginning to shift, and the Virexi for the first time felt the terrifying grip of fear. The Virexi warlords had always considered themselves the pinnacle of military might, the unchallenged masters of the galaxy. Their fleet, a staggering array of colossal warships and relentless attack drones, was an unstoppable force, until humanity's unexpected rise turned their assumptions into ashes. What the Virexi didn't anticipate was that the very things they deemed insignificant, humans' creativity, their ability to adapt, and their relentless will to survive, would now prove to be the key to their undoing. In the command center of the Dominion flagship Eternal Dominion, Virexi General Kavar stood before a vast holographic display of Earth's defenses. The battlefield was a chaotic mess. The human resistance had gone beyond anything they had prepared for. The Dominion had expected Earth's militaries to scatter, to falter under the might of their overwhelming force. But instead, Earth's military leaders had pulled off an unthinkable move. They'd forged alliances with long-forgotten allies, human factions from across the solar system, and even the robotic remnants of humanity's early space endeavors. Far beneath Earth's surface, forgotten warships rose from their cryptic bunkers, including the ancient Vanguard, the flagship of Earth's first interstellar navy. In space, a fleet of vessels, crafted from alien alloys scavenged from crashed ships, set sail with a singular purpose: to reclaim their world. The Dominion's sensors struggled to comprehend the situation as human-made warships, a collection of repurposed, hybridized technology, emerged from the depths of the solar system's farthest reaches. These ships were not sleek, shiny masterpieces of engineering like the Virexi's ships, but instead, they were a rough amalgamation of various human technologies, welded together into something that could weather the storms of war. The Vanguard was perhaps the greatest surprise. For all the might of the Dominion's fleet, they had never faced a ship like it. Designed for a war humanity had fought long ago, the Vanguard had been left to rust in an underground hangar until now. Its weapon systems, though aged, were as powerful as they had ever been. Its enormous fusion-powered cannons, now reactivated, could fire a single burst of energy that tore through a moon's surface with ease. The Dominion flagship's shields, designed to withstand the fury of entire star systems, buckled under the first strike. The force of the blast sent shockwaves across the battlefield, causing the surrounding enemy ships to break formation. On Earth's surface, the resistance forces, comprising every man, woman, and child who had ever dreamed of a free humanity, continued to push back against the Dominion's ground forces. Earth's cities were reduced to battlegrounds, streets littered with the wreckage of war. But through the smoke and debris, humanity's spirit could not be broken. Each strike from the Dominion's forces was met with fierce retaliation from the humans, who had nothing left to lose. From the ruins of New York City, a new generation of warriors arose. These weren't just soldiers, they were survivors, hardened by years of conflict and loss. They had lived through the dark days of Earth's fractured peace, and now they were fighting for a future they would protect with their blood. Among them was Captain Lydia Grayson, a former pilot who had once flown reconnaissance missions for Earth's military. Now, she commanded a squadron of human-made modified warships, ships constructed from spare parts and salvaged alien technology. As the leader of the Stellar Vanguard, a fleet of ships made from scrap metal, scrap drives, and repurposed Virexi weapons, she led the charge against the invading forces. But what made Captain Grayson's tactics so devastating was her knowledge of alien technology. Through years of studying Virexi communications, she had uncovered a critical vulnerability. The Virexi's weapon systems were tightly linked to their communication network. If that network could be disrupted, their weapons would malfunction, leaving their fleet vulnerable. Grayson's squadron had been equipped with a series of electromagnetic pulse, EMP devices, which they used to disable the Virexi's most critical systems. The EMP blasts weren't just tactical strikes, they were psychological warfare. The moment the first blast hit, the Virexi's deadly energy weapons faltered. Their flagship's shields, once impenetrable, began to flicker. In a matter of seconds, several ships in the Dominion fleet were rendered useless. Unable to communicate, unable to fire on target, and unable to launch countermeasures, they were sitting ducks for humanity's relentless assault. The battle raged on across the surface and in the vacuum of space. The skies above Earth turned into a chaotic battlefield, with ships weaving between massive debris fields and hurling themselves at the invaders with ferocity. Humanity wasn't just fighting for its survival. It was fighting to reclaim its place in the stars. Every ship launched, every strike made, was an act of defiance, an assertion that Earth's will to survive could not be broken. But there was a deeper strategy at play. Humanity, for all its technological advancements, had one critical advantage over the Virexi: the ability to improvise. They had learned from the mistakes of past wars, from the arms races, and from the delicate balance of peace. The Dominion had relied too heavily on their technology, but Earth had a different approach. The most important lesson humans had learned wasn't in crafting the perfect weapon. It was in knowing when to rely on technology and when to trust the unpredictable nature of human ingenuity. On the ground, the Resistance's success didn't solely rely on the weapons and strategies they had developed. It was the emotional and psychological impact that turned the tide. The Virexi had come to Earth thinking that the human race would fall before their superior power. Instead, they were witnessing humanity's unyielding spirit, the way humans adapted, evolved, and fought not just to win, but to protect their home. This was something the Virexi had never been able to fathom: the indomitable nature of Earth's defenders. Each human, armed with whatever they could scrounge, became a force to be reckoned with. There was no hierarchy, no sense of professional military prowess. It was a raw, collective power, an energy that fueled the fires of resistance. At the same time, human ingenuity began to manifest in ways that were unimaginable. The Resistance started deploying new types of weapons, ones never seen before. Plasma pulse rifles, magnetic pulse grenades, and cloaking technology built into personal armor suits began to emerge on the battlefield. The Dominion's attempts to suppress these new technologies were met with failure at every turn. Humanity had not just adapted, it had innovated. The Virexi were starting to realize the terrible truth. They had underestimated their enemy, and as they looked out over the chaotic battlefield, watching their once immense warships crumble under the onslaught of human creativity, they understood one thing: they were no longer fighting a species they could crush in minutes. They were fighting a force that had come to play by its own rules, in ways they could never anticipate. As the battle for Earth reached its apex, the Virexi began to realize the full scope of their mistake. Their weapons, once the envy of 1,000 star systems, were now rendered obsolete in the face of humanity's fierce resistance. What they hadn't accounted for was the fact that Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a crucible, one that had been forged through centuries of hardship, survival, and the unpredictable brilliance of its people. And now, it was fighting back, not just with technology, but with an indomitable will to survive. In the shadow of the crumbling alien fleet, the Virexi generals scrambled to regroup. Their communication systems, once thought impenetrable, were now riddled with glitches and failures. The EMP attacks had disrupted not just their weapons, but their command and control networks as well. Fleet coordination began to break down, and for the first time since the invasion began, doubt started to creep into the minds of the Virexi leadership. How had this happened? How had a species they considered primitive and easily crushed managed to resist them so fiercely? On the surface of Earth, the war raged with renewed intensity. Resistance fighters, soldiers, civilians, and engineers alike moved through the ruins of cities, coordinating strikes, sabotaging enemy supply lines, and rescuing survivors. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the sounds of distant explosions, and the hum of makeshift weaponry filling the air. It was a war unlike any the Virexi had fought before. The tactics, the unpredictability of human forces, and the sheer determination of Earth's people left the invaders struggling to keep up. Yet it wasn't just the resistance on the ground that was making a difference. As the Virexi began to falter in space, something far more dangerous was taking shape: humanity's secret weapon. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, buried in hidden military bases and secret laboratories, scientists had been working on a project so devastating, so revolutionary, that the very existence of the Virexi fleet could be wiped out in a single stroke. For years, this project had been shrouded in secrecy, hidden even from most human governments. Only a select few knew of its existence, and fewer still understood the full extent of its potential. The weapon, codenamed Prometheus, was not a single ship or a weaponized satellite, but a groundbreaking technology that could harness the power of a star. It was an artificial singularity generator, a device capable of creating a controlled black hole, small but powerful enough to swallow entire fleets. But this was no ordinary black hole. Humanity's scientists had spent decades studying the behavior of dark matter, neutron stars, and the event horizons of black holes. They had discovered how to harness the immense gravitational forces of these cosmic anomalies, creating a weapon that could bend space itself to humanity's will. The first trial runs of Prometheus had been catastrophic. Ships disappeared. Entire research stations were obliterated. But after years of refinement, the project was ready for deployment. And now, as the Virexi fleet began to fragment under the pressure of humanity's relentless counterattacks, Prometheus would be unleashed. In a high-tech, underground facility deep within the Rocky Mountains, the final preparations were underway. The device, housed in a massive containment chamber, was ready for activation. A team of scientists and engineers, their faces a mixture of anxiety and hope, worked feverishly to ensure everything was in place. The moment of truth was rapidly approaching. As the countdown ticked down, a special team of operatives, led by Commander Arik Mercer, prepared to launch the final phase of the operation. Mercer had seen firsthand the devastation of the Virexi's initial assault, had lost comrades in brutal skirmishes, and had witnessed the terror of the alien bombardments, but he was not afraid. He knew that the stakes had never been higher, and the survival of humanity depended on this last, desperate measure. The final signal came through the encrypted channels. Prometheus was online, and the weapon was ready for activation. Mercer's team moved into position, securing the launch pad and preparing to launch the powerful energy pulse that would initiate the Singularity's creation. A surge of energy coursed through the system as the artificial black hole was brought online, its gravity slowly warping the space around it. Meanwhile, in orbit, the remaining Virexi ships were in disarray. The Dominion flagship, Eternal Dominion, was still reeling from the last EMP strike. Its weapons were disabled, its engines barely functional. The alien forces were scrambling to react, but they were running out of time. The human resistance was relentless, and they were beginning to score decisive victories. For every Virexi ship destroyed, a new wave of human-made ships took its place. The Vanguard, Earth's last line of defense, led the charge, its massive cannons unleashing devastating barrages on the remaining Virexi warships. But it was Prometheus that would seal their fate. As the countdown reached its final seconds, the scientists activated the weapon. The containment chamber hummed with energy, and a blinding pulse of light erupted from the device. The very fabric of space seemed to shudder as the artificial black hole stabilized and began to grow. In an instant, the Virexi fleet, numbering over 100 warships, was caught in the gravitational pull. It was as if time itself stretched and snapped. The Virexi fleet, helpless to escape the growing singularity, was drawn into the darkness. Their mighty ships, once symbols of unstoppable power, vanished into the black hole's crushing embrace. The destruction was absolute. Not even the smallest debris survived. The human forces on the ground paused for a moment, their hearts racing, as they waited for the confirmation. And then, the news came. The Virexi fleet has been eradicated. The invasion was over. But even in the aftermath, the significance of what had just transpired began to sink in. Humanity had done the unthinkable. Not just by surviving the Virexi invasion, but by decisively turning the tide in their favor. The Prometheus weapon had wiped out an entire fleet with a single pulse. But at what cost? The power to manipulate space itself was a gift and a curse. What else might humanity unleash by mastering such immense forces? Could this new power be used for good, or would it become yet another dangerous weapon in the hands of the wrong people? The human race had proven one thing. They were not a species to be underestimated. But as they looked out over the battlefield, victorious yet scarred, they understood that the real fight had only just begun. For even with the Virexi vanquished, the universe held far darker secrets. Secrets that might one day test the very foundation of humanity's will to survive. The final days of the Varexi invasion passed in a blur of triumphant relief, tempered by the heavy weight of uncertainty. Earth was left in ruins, its cities reduced to smoking craters, its survivors scattered and scarred. But despite the devastation, there was a sense of awe in the air, a realization that humanity had faced down an impossible force and had not only survived, but had triumphed. As the remnants of the alien fleet were studied and salvaged, the true cost of the victory became clear. Prometheus, the weapon that had turned the tide, was a double-edged sword. Its power to bend the very fabric of space had not been without consequence. The governments of Earth, already strained by the shock of the invasion, now faced an entirely new dilemma. In the wake of the destruction, the world's nations were forced to rebuild, not just their cities, but their entire social and political order. The alliance forged in the fires of battle now had to hold firm as humanity turned its attention inward, grappling with the terrifying potential of their new weapon. Could they wield it responsibly? Or would the temptation of such power lead them down a darker path? Commander Arik Mercer, whose leadership had been integral to humanity's victory, stood at the forefront of this new world. He had seen the face of war, the brutal, unrelenting carnage that had ravaged Earth. And yet, the horrors of the battlefield were now dwarfed by the weight of the responsibility that lay ahead. For the first time, humanity stood on the precipice of becoming something more than just a species struggling for survival. They had unlocked the secrets of the universe, and the consequences of that discovery could not be ignored. Prometheus had proven that humanity had the power to shape the cosmos itself. But with this power came the terrifying knowledge that no one, not even Earth, was safe from the forces they had unleashed. The political leaders of Earth convened in secret, their meetings held behind closed doors in the wake of the victory. As they gathered, the realization that the Varexi were not the only threat in the galaxy began to sink in. They had destroyed an empire, yes, but the universe was vast, and there were far greater powers beyond the reach of humanity's current knowledge. The Varexi, though technologically advanced, had been just one of many empires in a galaxy teeming with life. The question now was whether humanity could stand against whatever came next. Could Prometheus, a weapon capable of erasing entire fleets, protect Earth from the next wave of invaders? Or would it invite even greater peril? Mercer, ever the strategist, understood the fragile nature of this newfound power. The victory over the Varexi had been earned at great cost, and though humanity had proven its resilience, they were not the only ones who had been watching. The destruction of the Varexi fleet had sent ripples throughout the galaxy, and now Earth had become a target. Alien civilizations, some perhaps even more advanced than the Varexi, would surely take notice. The weapon humanity had unlocked, Prometheus, could not remain a secret for long. It was only a matter of time before someone else sought it out. As the months passed, Earth began to rebuild. Cities rose from the ashes, and the survivors, though scarred by the invasion, began to pick up the pieces of their shattered world. Yet the shadow of the Varexi threat hung over them. Even with the alien empire vanquished, the question remained: who else was out there? The realization that humanity was no longer alone in the universe, at least not in the way they once thought, changed everything. A new age of space exploration dawned as humanity turned its gaze beyond the stars. The Prometheus technology, now under the careful control of Earth's most trusted scientists and military leaders, became both a symbol of hope and a warning. The fear that something even worse than the Varexi was lurking in the depths of space haunted their every decision. For the first time, Earth's leaders found themselves in a delicate balance. To advance, they had to push the boundaries of what they knew, but to remain safe, they had to tread carefully, for every step forward could bring unforeseen consequences. Commander Mercer, having witnessed the destructive power of Prometheus firsthand, was torn between the desire to protect humanity at all costs and the nagging fear that they had opened a door that could never be closed. He spent countless nights alone, staring up at the stars, wondering what lay beyond. Could humanity be ready to face the other dangers lurking in the void? Or had they only succeeded in drawing the attention of far more dangerous enemies? The leaders of Earth made a decision that would shape the course of humanity for centuries to come. Rather than hiding from the galaxy, Earth would extend an olive branch to the stars. The message was simple, yet profound. Humanity had been forged in the fires of conflict, but they were more than just survivors. They were explorers, they were builders, and they were ready to face whatever lay beyond the stars. The first human-led fleet, armed with the knowledge of Prometheus and a newly established alliance of Earth's nations, was launched into the galaxy. It wasn't just a military mission. It was an expedition, a journey to find new worlds, to establish new alliances, and to learn from the civilizations that had once looked down on them. But with this newfound ambition came the same question that had plagued humanity from the beginning. Would they succeed in forging a place for themselves among the stars, or would they be swallowed up by the same forces that had sought to destroy them? As the fleet traveled deeper into the galaxy, humanity's fate hung in the balance. Every new world they encountered, every new species they met, brought with it both opportunities and threats. But one thing was clear. Humanity had proven its worth. They had faced down an alien empire and emerged victorious. The galaxy would never be the same again, and neither would humanity. But as the fleet ventured into the unknown, one final, chilling thought lingered in the minds of Earth's leaders. What if the worst was yet to come? The stars, it seemed, were full of dangers, and humanity had only just begun to understand the forces that could tear them apart. The end of one war had only set the stage for the next. And as Earth's leaders looked to the stars, they knew one thing for certain. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer one of submission. They were a force to be reckoned with.